Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I wanted to talk about some of the more negative side effects I experienced when getting down to low body fat during this first bodybuilding prep. I wanted to make this video to show what goes on under the metaphorical hood of a physique competition and show that getting super lean is mostly overrated for the normal bodybuilding enthusiast if you aren't planning on competing. Also, this video will serve as kind of a snapshot of the struggles I faced during this first prep, as well as being a great reminder to myself on why gaining weight post-show is actually a good and necessary thing, because I don't want to live experiencing these side effects all the time. For all the negative I experienced, I would honestly not change a thing, because this first prep was mostly a learning experience and trial run for all of the preps to come after this one. I think I needed to experience at least a bit of hardship and struggle to see what I was capable of and know that this is something that I wanted to do and was capable of doing in the future. But there is really no good and bad, there just is, so here is my is. I plan on making more videos detailing all of the takeaways, mostly positive, like my previous video I made, because this prep was very transformative and I definitely became a better person on the other side of it. So, okay, let's get into it. When I was in the thick of it, I wrote down any weird neurotic habit I picked up or some of the nastier physical impacts I felt, because I knew that I would forget everything bad that came of prep and only really be able to look back with the rose-colored glasses we all do at all the positives that prep brought me. Recently, I have been struggling post-show to kind of see body fat coming on. After 27 weeks of consistently being proud of seeing the scale go down day by day, it's going to take some massive rewiring of the brain to get myself to be proud of seeing the opposite happening. So with that in mind, here are some of the side effects I noticed in myself as I was getting down to these lower stage lean body fat levels and having lost over 30 pounds over this process. Of course, this is my own experience and is not a list of things you should expect if you plan on competing yourself. A lot of competitors don't experience nearly as many negative effects, and I'm hopeful that my subsequent preps will be much smoother and have less of an overall impact on my day-to-day and quality of life. Okay, number one. First main thing I noticed was how similar prep was to my period of severe self-imposed restriction in the past. I've talked about this briefly before, but I went through a pretty intense rough patch as a teen and lost a lot of weight in a short amount of time. Many issues arose from that, and I found myself dealing with similar to almost exact issues during prep as I did then. Interestingly enough, I saw this as a positive because I knew that if I had gotten out of that place once already, mentally and physically, I could do it again and do it better this time with having that experience to look back on in the past. I've heard some seasoned bodybuilders talk about the Minnesota starvation study as a point of reference when it comes to talking about weird habits picked up in prep with food and activity, and I find that interesting because I read that study many years ago when I was first trying to pull myself out of my self-destructive, restrictive behaviors. The study is basically a controlled starvation experiment where a group of men were fed very low calories for a period of time and observed during that time. Ethics aside, it gave a real clear picture of how human behavior changes in order to cope with being actually starved and having food massively restricted. Seeing these bodybuilders bring up the study made me feel kind of more validated in my own experiences and realize that it wasn't just me that was feeling all these effects. Also, Lyle McDonald, love that guy, has stated on various occasions in different podcasts that competitive bodybuilding sort of selects for people with eating disorders. Terribly sounding enough, but it is kind of the sport of starving, so I almost agree a little bit with what he said there. Okay, long intro aside, the first actual side effect I noticed was being freezing cold at all times. As body fat got lower and calories were lower, it was harder and harder for me to feel warmth at really any point of the day. I could not break a sweat for the life of me and usually had a couple of shirts on, followed by a couple of hoodies and jackets. I would spend time in the sauna daily at the beginning to try and sweat, but I ended up stopping that due to the extreme coldness I would feel after leaving the sauna. Taking check-in pictures in my bikini was like pulling teeth some mornings because I had head-to-toe goosebumps right when I got out of bed. Since calories were dropped substantially by the end, the thermic effect of food was greatly reduced, so I wasn't generating much body heat from food at the end either. The only time I really felt warm was when I was in the shower with the heat on full blast. Other than that, it was pretty much being cold all the time, and that was not the most fun. 2. The next major effect I noticed in myself was my ability to be a functioning adult and complete necessary tasks was greatly impacted. This only truly occurred toward the end of prep, but I found myself being pretty useless when it came to anything other than going to the gym and eating my little allotment of food. I was Instacarting every single thing to my door so I didn't have to go to the store. I would miss more classes when it came to school, not my proudest moment, and I would try to stay home as much as possible. Simply didn't have the energy to drive more places than necessary or do things that weren't related to this bodybuilding goal I had. Also, simple tasks like cleaning, doing laundry, getting gas had to be planned for and thought about way more because I was so low energy and tired. I would also tend to get overwhelmed when it came to doing these little things, and I would tend to blow those little tasks way out of proportion. Getting an oil change became a month-long debacle of me spending more energy avoiding scheduling it rather than just taking it to get service when I had a second. Every little inconvenience became a mountain rather than me seeing it as the molehill it truly was. 3. On the topic of low energy, I experienced just a total downregulation of all activity. I simply wanted to lay down all day when before I was getting 20,000 steps some days, just bouncing around, living life. Getting up to complete my steps was a chore, and getting my lift in felt like I was tasked with carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders some days. My legs were perpetually fatigued, and my feet were usually throbbing daily by the end of prep. I would catch myself leaning against walls when standing and sitting on machines at the gym instead of walking around between sets. I could really fall asleep anywhere, and my eyes just wanted to stay closed. My body was really trying to just conserve energy at any extra spot it could. And, of course, the name of the game is keeping the energy expenditure up. 4. Now I'll talk about some of the social impacts I experienced. At the beginning, I was able to go out with friends and be social without any trouble or anxiety, but as I got deeper, I found it increasingly difficult to spend time in the presence of other people. It sounds horrible and terrible, but I just wanted to be alone with my food and my tasks to complete for the day. My personality changed a bit, and I was no longer capable of being funny. Not that I'm a massive jokester to begin with, but having the energy to laugh or find humor in anything was almost impossible. I would think something is funny, but not be able to really express it outwardly. My patience was also wearing very thin, and the smallest things someone else would do would irritate me. I would get mad at small things like people laughing too loud or someone eating something that was egregiously unhealthy in my mind. Holding conversations became hard for me, and I lost all desire to chit-chat and small talk. I would hope that friends wouldn't ask me to hang out because I didn't have the energy to do anything, and then felt super bad about having to turn them down due to my bodybuilding prep. I know that a lot of competitors are able to keep up with all relationships seamlessly, but I struggled hard with this during this first prep. Next time around, I will put much more effort into maintaining all friendships and family relationships because I don't want to be that person that becomes horrible when they are so focused on chasing a goal. So next time we'll for sure be better about that. 5. Now to talk about some of the weird food habits that I picked up. The first thing I noticed was that I would take much longer to prepare meals and make them the exact same every day, with the same utensils and bowls and plates every single day. If the food wasn't the right temperature, I wouldn't eat it until it was, and if people were talking to me while I was eating, I would stop eating until I could focus solely on the meal. Mealtime became very reverent for me, and I would either need to find a perfect YouTube video before eating or be in complete silence. I was also eating food as slow as possible, trying to make the food last, and using smaller spoons and forks where I could. I became very neurotic, to say the least, about eating the same exact things every day to make sure my morning weigh-in was an exact reflection of weight loss and not due to the food sources being different. Salt and water, of course, were also very strictly maintained so that those did not affect any weigh-ins the next day as well. As you can tell, these are not normal food behaviors, and that Minnesota starvation study I referenced earlier talks a bit about this as well. 6. Next, I noticed that my brain was starting to almost buffer the last 2 or 3 weeks. It felt like a fog had been lowered and I couldn't quite see through it. Responding to simple questions and making decisions took way too much effort, and remembering things became noticeably harder. I'm glad to have graduated college at about 7 weeks out from my show because my grades would definitely have slipped if I had to complete all the previous coursework and tests over those next few weeks. My only real focus was on food and how to make it through the day at that point, so thinking about much else was really not happening. 7. Next, I just wanted to touch on sleep. So my sleep did take a hit at the end of prep, but it kind of was terrible even before I started prep due to just kind of stress and anxiety overall. So I didn't see a terrible impact during prep, just kind of some nights it would be difficult to fall asleep due to my stomach growling, or I was waking up super early due to being hungry, so things like that weren't good. But I never had any nights where I got less than about 4 hours of sleep, so sleep was okay, all things considered. 8. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on motivation. So obviously we don't rely on motivation to get things done, but it sure is nice to feel some zest and passion for life, and my motivation by the end was pretty much gone. I was motivated as hell to see this goal through and to be perfect with my plan, but I was not so motivated to do the actual specific actions like getting on the treadmill at the crack of dawn, or giving it my all at the gym every day, or making my tiny bowl of tuna and green beans that I had had for 27 weeks straight. Motivation to be creative for anything really took a hit as well, and things like posting a simple thing on Instagram or making a story or posting on YouTube was very much more difficult because I felt no creative juices or just motivation to even try. So that was definitely not ideal, and my spark kind of was dimmed, and I became just more of a shell, more of a monkey brain, just going through the motions, or hamster on the hamster wheel, just pushing myself through every day without thinking about much. And the loss of motivation for things I had previously loved kind of really played more on my mind than anything, and I was just getting through the day by remembering that this isn't truly me, this is just the lower food and the super high fatigue that was making me feel this way, and I wasn't actually depressed or sad or anxious or anything like that. So remembering that this was a byproduct of prep was very helpful as well, because I knew that once the calories were higher and the fatigue was dropped, my kind of just zest for life would come back. Alrighty, so those are some of the main things I experienced over prep, and I really debated making this video because I never want to sound whiny or weak or deter anyone from undergoing this process themselves. Competing has, even just this first time, given me so much, and like I said earlier, I will continue to make videos on all the lessons and takeaways that I learned. But I think it is helpful to just be honest and possibly relate to someone out there watching this who felt like they were alone in their struggle, and if that's you, let me know in the comments below because I would love to feel a little less crazy. And despite all these symptoms that I experienced, I really didn't feel too bad when I was in the thick of it. I quickly learned to just put one foot in front of the other and truly did start to enjoy the self-imposed suffering of it all. There definitely is something romantic about the process of prepping for a bodybuilding show, and those of us that like to push ourselves and do hard things really can thrive in this environment. So honestly, I can't wait to do a show again after a long time spent in the off-season and growing, of course. Even with all these negative effects, I would do it again in a heartbeat. So on that note, I hope this video shed some light on the experience of me, a single natural bodybuilder who competed for the first time, and kind of showed some of the things to expect if you're getting to super low levels of body fat. Not that I was super shredded by any means, but just the experience of one person that got pretty lean for the first time ever. So if you can relate, like I said, to any of the effects I mentioned, let me know in the comments below, because yeah, I would really appreciate not feeling so just psychotic, because when you look on Instagram or YouTube, you kind of just see all the glitz and glamour of getting super lean and looking super hot, and not many people like to talk about the negatives they experience. So yeah, I just wanted to be that person, and yeah, I think that's all I got for today. Thank you for watching the video wherever you are in the world, and I will talk to you in the next video. Peace.